But your guests were iconic.
But a friend of mine spent about a month with Biggie.
I was gonna text you and say, bro, they've got you in the blogs. They're saying you're not showering. I showered twice.
What? What's wrong with you?
So you started TV early on. Like your mum used to kind of put you up for adverts, right?
Well, yeah, but it's weird. It sounds more showbiz than it was. Here's the deal. My mum, I think, was always a bit, not frustrated, but she always loved the idea of trying to be involved in that kind of world.
She was quite artsy, your mum as well,
she
right?
was a little, yeah, I mean, not artsy crafty. I mean, she didn't make things or do things, but she was into film and she liked, she was, both my parents were interesting because they both left school really young. She left school when she was like 13. My dad left school when he was about 15, I think. And they got together. They were both working then. And they both came from difficult families, So I think that's why they wanted to get out.
Yeah, of course.
And they met and she was 16 when she had her first child. My dad was 18 when his son was born. My oldest brother was born on my dad's 18th birthday.
That's
so imagine
mad.
nowadays, you think that seems... You can't imagine an 18 and 16-year-old starting a big family, but that was quite common back then. The world has changed.
Of course.
And so they were but they were interesting because although they left school, they were quite well educated because like my dad used to read quite a lot. My mum used to read quite a lot. So I think they were kind of curious people and interesting people and nice people. And so we were lucky in that way. But she knew that, you could, that she was always say there is a world outside of, because in Leytonstone, no one, I didn't know anyone who even knew anyone who worked in TV or who acted or did anything in terms of show business or anything in the arts. And she was always saying, you could do this kind of thing. Whenever she'd read something about someone from our sort of background, she said, look at this, So she saw an advert in a paper saying large families wanted for TV commercials. And I was one of 6. So she took us along and they signed us up for this agency. So we did a few adverts when we were kids. Which, by the way, I never saw the money for.
Really?
I'm still furious. They spent the money, which is fair enough. They had 6 kids.
They're
making ends meet. But like when you're a kid, you think, an advert. Maybe I did one advert. It was for Rice Krispies, right?
Yeah.
And I knew sometimes you got given things on the adverts, and so they bought me this terrible shirt of yellow polyester shirt, and these brown kind of like synthetic trousers. But there was a bike. I had to ride a bike down the hill, and I'm thinking, man, they're going to give me the bike. I'm going to get a bike. I haven't got a bike. I really want this bike. And the last day they said, oh, we've left something for you in the trailer. I went in. You know what they gave me?
What?
The shirt. This yellow sticky shirt. That's all I got. But I didn't feel like stuff was being taken from me. It was like we just didn't have much. And so she kind of did that. And then because we'd done that, I think you kind of had an inkling that there was a business and it sort of operated as a business, and there were ways in. And so I did little bits, but we were never sort of actors and we were never doing show. We never did plays. We didn't go to drama schools. We didn't go to stage schools. We just went to regular schools. And then I drifted into TV because my oldest brother, Paul, he'd studied English university and he went on to become a journalist at a local paper. And that was kind of a traditional route getting into some of the kind of shows on TV, like news shows. You had a journalistic background. And he got into that. And then when I was at university, and this was in the days when it was so much easier back then, really. I feel for kids today because when you went to university, if you got fairly okay grades, you could get into university and the government would pay.
Yeah.
So the government paid the tuition fees. The government gave you a grant to survive on if you were from a poor family. So I would get money to pay, for student accommodation, money to live on, not that much, and you didn't have to worry about tuition fees. So, of course, if you could go to university, you went to university.
Yeah.
I went just so I didn't have to work for 3 years.
Yeah.
That was it. It's like,
But your guests were iconic. I think I told you this last year when I think you started re-uploading some of the older clips.
Yeah, so the company put some stuff online. Yeah.
And some of those people that you interview is so different to how an interview is now, I think, a little bit, because I feel like now you kind of know when someone's like, yes, essentially someone's coming on to plug a new, a new record or a film or TV show. But it just felt really nice because it's like one-on-one. It's kind of got the desk thing, so it feels a little bit like an American interview, but it had this British humor with it to it as well. So I feel like you was able to be warm and friendly, draw them in to let them relax and then open up.
The show was slightly more combative as well. It was more like I would not go for them, but make jokes about them, which came from a place of fondness and respect. I think.
Yeah, of course.
And we don't do that so much anymore, mainly because we have all the guests on at once now. And that was a change. We gradually slipped into that during COVID days because it was harder to bring people on. Moving people around the studio just became such a kind of a task. And so we went there, and people like the show as it is now. And I think only in the last series have adjusted my style enough to make that work in a way that I like it now. I struggled with it for a while, I think, for a few years, but now I think the show is where I want it to be again. But it was certainly, I mean, we certainly got amazing guests.
You had amazing. I used to watch it as a kid, not to make you feel too old or anything, but I used to watch it, and seeing the guests you had was always something to like. In some ways, I didn't know then that what I wanted to do is what I do now. I remember seeing Dizzy Rascal on there at the height of his fame, and I remember him being on there and being like, yeah, you know, I've got like my Gucci loafers on there, and like seeing those acts, that it was always the pinnacle of like, you know, when you've made it is when you got on the Jonathan Ross show. That was such an aspiration for so many of us growing up watching it, because again, I'd watch it on like a Friday night in bed, and you see like, you know, your Tom Cruise on there, you'll see like Amy Winehouse on there, and you had some like, I remember an interview you had with Tom Hardy on there, but it wasn't, I feel like the Tom Hardy we know now was like the action star, film star. It was just kind of getting into his career, and that interview I always remember was quite deep, if I can remember. It was quite a deep interview, but I was like, oh wow, like I don't know this guy, but he seems like a cool actor.
Well, Tom Hardy's such an interesting bloke anyway. And I think, you know what, it's nice you say that, but I think sometimes it wasn't, like Tom Hardy came on and he was open to talk in a certain way.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was my abilities that necessarily made that good or interesting. I think he was just an interesting man who was prepared to do that.
Yeah, I just don't feel like you get that now, though.
I don't know whether you do so much. I mean, it's harder. For example, on the show I do now, when we have all the guests at once, you don't get that one-on-one, and so people you aren't focusing on them. And I think just by the nature they have 2 or 3 other guests around them, they're not going to open up quite as much. They're not going to make it as much about themselves. Partly out of politeness, in a way. You know, it's like we're all. And so I do miss doing that.
Yeah.
I do miss doing that a little bit. But I mean, you know, the great thing about ITV are very cool. The great thing about my show is if I wanted to bring someone out on their own one week, I could phone them and say, we're not doing that. Set up this week, we're doing this. And they'll say, fine.
Yeah.
You know, and so maybe we will do some more like that again. He phoned me up and he said, oh, I'm going to be in your part of London. I said, all right, Tom. He said, I was going to pop by, and he's got a son. And he said, I think he didn't know what to do with his son. So he came up, and it was him, his son, and his personal trainer, this nice guy whose nickname was Peanut. I'm not quite sure why. Who sadly is no longer with us anymore.
Okay.
Young guy, but he died or something. And so he came in, and we had the weirdest day, because I didn't quite know what to do. So we had his son, so I said, well, let's do this. And then I took the kid in the garden, and we played in the garden one. And then at one stage, Tom was telling me about his workout routine. And his workout routine, he had the trailer, had to carry him upstairs. He had to carry the train upstairs.
Yeah.
And I went, you can do it. And he picked me up and showed me how he could carry me up the stairs. And I thought, no one's going to believe this. No one's going to believe that Tom Hardy has come from my house. He's carrying me in my own house upstairs. And then we played some. His son fell asleep in one of the chairs, and we played some video games together. It was like Call of Duty or something. And then he went home. Never came out again. But a really, really lovely, really interesting man, and an amazing actor.
Yeah, great.
He's
actor.
One of my favourite actors. Did you see what was the series Taboo? Did you see the TV series Taboo?
Yes. Yeah.
Loved that. He was so good in that. So yeah, I've had some strange encounters over the years. Eminem came round one night.
Really?
Did I tell you about that one?
No, you didn't tell me this one.
He was on my show a few times. I loved Eminem. And it turned out we were talking backstage, and it turned out that he liked American comic books. Yeah. And you know, I've got a big collection. I love this stuff. Man. I started talking about some of the stuff at home, and he said, oh man, I'd love to see that. I said, we can come in if you want. How long are you in town for? He said, well, we're doing something more. I said, well, do you want to come in after the show? He said, yeah, okay.
That's crazy.
So we drove home. So he turned up with, he didn't have a big entourage. He had like one bodyguard with him. Yeah. Enormous guy, you can imagine.
Yeah.
So came in the house. I phoned my wife out. I said, oh, look, just don't panic. I'm bringing Eminem home. She said, what are you talking about? He's at the show. She said, okay. So we go in, and he was so polite, which I think you sometimes get from people who've come from a very poor background. So we walk in the room. Bear in mind, you know, it's Eminem. You know?
Yeah, man.
And he walked to my room, and he went, and I started checking. He went, can we sit down? I went, of course you should sit down.
Yeah.
Sit down. Went in another room. Went, can we sit down? I went, stop asking me if you can fucking sit down. If you're in a room, you want to sit down, sit down.
Yeah.
He sat down and he showed me. And at once I didn't really know what to do. Because I'm actually, even though I'm very relaxed with people, sometimes I don't necessarily understand all the conventions of what you do with people. Came in, so I said, do you want to see the house? So I started showing the house. He liked my dressing room. That all my sneakers, I've got this floor, which is a raised floor, and all the sneakers in perspex under the floor.
Oh, wow.
And you use the thing to lift the floor up and get your shoes out.
Sick.
So they're all on display. He loved that.
Yeah.
And I had a load of bathing apes at the time. I was buying bathing apes, babes. And then I showed them. I said, oh, this is the room. Come in. This is the room where we do the washing and all that. And my wife came and said, why are you showing Eminem the laundry room? I went, Well, I was just showing them the house. You don't have to show, when you show a guest the house, you don't have to show the guest every room in the house.
Yeah.
I went, well, we were just going, I thought you might like to see it. And he did. He walked in, he went,
yeah.
oh man, so that's a hanging dry. He went, oh, that's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah.
And the other guy went, that's cool. I like the dry. That's a really cool flat. So I had a lot of people around my house, but we live a fairly normal life. I know it sounds
Yeah. No, you're out and about. I drove past you the other day.
Yeah. I just, it's like we're, in our mind, a very normal family.
Yeah.
And we have a very normal existence and a very, very comfortable and very lucky one. I like being guest on shows. Like I'm doing The Wheel next week. You've done all those shows as well. You go on those little one-off things.
Yeah.
And they pay. It's not the same sort of money. But it's quite fun having a reason to, for me, having a reason to shower. Because you're clean, aren't you? I can tell you're clean. I bet you shower twice a day then. You give off a sense of cleanness. But if I don't have an excuse, I can't be bothered. So it's like today, I hope
Hey, John, this is what they said in the streets, man.
I hope you appreciate it. I washed, for you today, I had a shower. Now, if I wasn't doing this today, then I wouldn't have bothered. I'd have gone to my office. Because what am I doing
This is hit the blogs, my guy. You know this, isn't it?
But Mo, I'm painting a witch. Why do I need to shower to paint a witch in my own space? That's all I was doing today, painting a witch and watching a bit of Netflix.
I was going to text you and say, bro, they've got you in the blogs. They're saying you're not showering.
Well, the thing is, I did exaggerate that when I was on Parenting Hell with Bob and Josh, and I did exaggerate. So it's not, I never go a week without showering in the UK. Look, no, help me save the planet. Stop heating up all that water. Stop heating up all the water. You're clean enough anyway. Just put more lotion on.
I shower twice.
Twice a day?
Yeah.
What? What's wrong with you? Why'd you do that?
I shower in the morning and then I shower at night.
Why?
Before I go to bed, innit? I like to feel fresh.
Okay, but in bed, I mean, I know you've got a healthy home life, but you're not doing that much every night. So sometimes
No,
you
but
can
like
get up, you
after a
don't
long
need-
day, you just want to you just shower,
Yeah,
innit?
but what about after the night in the morning?
And
Why
then I shower again in the morning.
Why?
Because you're fresh, man.
You don't need to be fresh. No, you're fresh enough as it is.